everyone. Welcome back to the Mama Gang podcast, where we tell you all the low-down truths about the hood motherhood. I'm your host, Brittany Bell.
What's up, guys? I'm Sophia.
And we are going to get right into it. We start out with one of your questions, and our question comes from the hood motherhood. How do you manage your own emotions so that you can be present for your children? That's our question starting us off today. But before we begin, we brought in a guest. We have a guest. She is incredible. And I just want to tell you a little bit about her. We welcome in Dr. Elizabeth Burke. She is an assistant professor at the University of the West. She earned a Bachelor of the Arts in Linguistics from University of California, Los Angeles, and her doctoral degree in clinical psychology, her psyD from Pepperdine University. Such a goal of mine. I'm trying to follow in her footsteps because not only that, but she was a mother of 3 in the process of getting her psychology doctoral degree. And she's in clinical and academic settings. She's able to specialize in multicultural examination of mental health through the lens of neuroscience, humanistic psychology, African-centered psychology, Buddhist psychology, and second and third wave behavioral therapies as it relates to trauma. And the best of all, like I said, she's a mama. So we have her here on the Mama Gang, Dr. Burke.
Welcome.
Thank
This
you.
is super
So
exciting
happy
for
to be
me
here.
having her on the Mama Gang because she's actually my auntie.
Yes. So is a granddaughter to her father.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But there's such a big question that we just got, and let's answer that first. And then we want to get into some of those real discussions behind, I think, the focus for me, transgenerational transmission of trauma. That's huge because as mothers, how do we, navigate through our own in order to make sure that we're not transferring that onto the next generation that we just brought life into, in this world with. So the question, how do you manage your own emotions so that you can be present for your children? That came from one of our audience members. So
That's wonderful. You know what? Those two are actually related because the way in which you can start to manage your own emotions in the face of motherhood, right, is actually noticing that you're becoming elevated. Right? A lot of times, we've been taught maybe as a child or we've been taught by our parents that possibly, we don't show those emotions. Those aren't welcome here. You're not allowed to feel that. You're not allowed to show that. Mm-hmm. And so we decide to ignore ourselves. We decide to do what our parents showed us or taught us, or our caregivers showed us or taught us, and ignore them, push them away, push them down, don't bring them up, don't talk about it, act like it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Right? And those things is when the emotions can just get out of control because we can only shove emotions down for so long. I talk to my clients about this all the time. Like if it's like a beach ball, and let's say you're in the pool and you got a beach ball and you're holding that beach ball underneath the water. That's the same thing as you shoving down your emotions. Mm-hmm. If you shove down your emotions, you hold those down. You can only hold it down for so long. Mm-hmm. You can only hold it down for as long as you're focused on holding it down. Now, some people consume all of their life holding down those emotions, whereas some people just might stop paying attention, and then boom.
Yeah.
What happened? It doesn't come up all slow and nice. Mm-hmm. It comes with like bam, smacks you in the face, and it's a problem.
Yeah.
So first step is recognizing, when am I elevated emotionally? I may have been taught to ignore that. I may have been taught to push that down, but allowing that to come up, and then going from there. That would be the first step. Now,
self-awareness.
Oh, yeah.
Self-awareness. So that is such a major key. Now you're talking about the transgenerational transmission of trauma, and then that is deeper because that is more subconscious. Trauma would have happened and passed down. You're talking about transgenerational trauma or even historical trauma, right? Wow. So if we're talking about like historical trauma for like people of color or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Then all of these things have been pushed down and they're so subconscious that we don't even know that we're being traumatized. The only thing that we might feel is like we might feel an intensity in our heart, a little flutter going on, something happening in our stomach or something like that. And then we try to ignore it. We try to push it away. We were talking about this earlier about the ability to, when those little feelings come up, what do? Sometimes we eat.
Yeah.
Sometimes we drink. Sometimes we have sex. Sometimes we whatever, just to get that feeling, that uncomfortable feeling, subsided.
Yeah,
Wow.
like a pacifier. Yeah, to just I think that's key, because as mothers we go through so much that could really provoke those stresses, especially when you're a first time mom. There's like, what am I doing? And then you go into the next layer of, how do I do this with the child that I had to learn what I was doing, and now we got another one. And then if you got more and more and more, that's where you just keep learning like where your triggers are. And I think for moms, just to touch on that in one aspect, is okay, you're on a heightened, irritability, and your child is just asking for their snacks to be open. And that's the most important thing to them is mommy, 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 or can you turn on my, and I've been there where I'm like, I can feel what's irritating me, and I have to be so aware of myself that I can, okay, calm it down. Yes, baby, because his world and my world are happening internally in two different ways. And I think when you're cognizant of that, that would be my answer to the mother, is get more self-aware of what you feel, where your emotions are at. So then you can shift when you can address those emotions, and then know how to address your child. That way you're not actually fighting with your child subconsciously when you're fighting with something else, and I think that's what can be really telling of how to manage your emotions. And then give yourself those key moments to relax, release, or get therapy.
Absolutely.
And I love you because you are like I'm like trying to be your protege in the world of accolades, because you got your doctoral degree. And that's thanks to Sosa, because Sosa was like, you've got to meet Dr. Burke. She heard I was going to Pepperdine, and she was like, you've got to meet her. And I was like, really? She's like, she's a mom. She had 3 while she was getting her doctor. And I was like, okay, I can do it.
I was a part of this journey with Dr. Burke with all 3 of the babies. So just to see her transition from, being a working mom, going to school full time, pregnancy, having the baby, going back to school, taking some time off. And when she did take some time off, I was like, you know what, Auntie, it's okay. Yeah. You should. It's okay.
Yeah.
So
that's another thing. I want to all the moms out there who are going to school. I get this question all the time, and we are on our own schedule. Okay, as a mom and being a student, you are on your own schedule. There's everyone else, it seems like, that's at the university, and they don't have kids, and they're zooming through, and they're doing, and then we feel like we need to keep up, and we need to do what they're doing, and we have to do it, and then it stresses us out, it freaks us out, we become overloaded, overwhelmed, and then what do? We trip out, we lose it, we think this is not meant for us, we're not supposed to. I've had to tell myself so many times that I have different wishes and desires and dreams than all of my other colleagues.
Yeah.
So I have to make room and space. It's very untraditional. I applied, I got pregnant, I took a year off. I went in, and a surprise, my daughter came. I took another year off, and then I was going along and thinking, okay, I'm about to finish my dissertation. I'm at my postdoc. Surprise, my 3rd baby came. So
wow.
I had to take another year off, and it was very untraditional, but no one asked
you did
me.
it your way.
That's true.
Yeah.
You have to.
And that was really inspiring to me. And I think that's also another part of managing what you need in life. Is it's a desire of mine to be able to say I'm Dr. Bell one day. So then to surround myself with somebody that's like a mentor, and I calling on you, and you became that for me. I'm like, okay, so that's another tool that a mother could use, is who's inspiring you to manage your emotions, and then also to encourage you into those purpose-driven things that you need to do. So I just appreciate that. I appreciate that you were able to really power through, and it's inspiring me. And I've had many people in the motherhood come through and say, hey, I was thinking about doing school, and I did it because I saw you were doing it, or I'm inspired to keep going. And if you thank me, there's a root from me that I was inspired by too. So I just wanted to shout out to those moms out there that are in school or in a career and managing. It doesn't matter what it is. And if your career is stay-at-home mom, hey, you too. It's everyone managing what they can and what's most passion, purpose filled for them. So transitioning though.
Oh yeah.
Because you are not just any guest. You are also in the same world. The Mama Gang has women who are really backbones in an industry, raising up children with the person that they've had kids with being, a really big force in the industry in some way, whether it was NFL, sports to, it could be music to television to something. And it's not easy operating in that world. Can we talk about your world? Because yours is a very interesting world, and I connect very deeply to it.
Which aspect?
I know, right?
Would you like to begin with?
Well, so tell us how you got into this, because that's where you kind of pulled all of this together. And I really want to touch on that because I love her. I love you, so because you can understand this world in different dynamics. You're not only in the athletic world, your husband being an NFL football player, but you are you're also in the industry. Your music, you are an artist, but your grandfather, and then you introduced me to your aunt, who's the daughter to your grandfather. So can you just talk about that, please?
Yeah, I have to just say one thing to all the moms out there. I am a woman of many hats, and I couldn't do it without the Mama Gang and Brittany in particular, because I do a lot of things. P.S. My brother Prince and I have a music group, and I totally stopped doing what I love to do, and I lost myself in becoming a mom, a wife, an NFL wife at that, and traveling, and you can forget who you are. So I want to encourage all of the women out there, listen, just because you're a mom, you're not just a mom. Continue to drive full speed ahead in who you are, because remember, before you became a mom, you had goals and dreams. And that's why these two inspire me so much, going back to school, becoming a doctor, studying to be a doctor. You can't lose yourself, and I'm really grateful because Dr. Burke is my aunt, and I got a chance to see her go through the highs and lows of school, and also growing up in a family, a huge family, in the entertainment realm. There's nothing like it, I have 20 aunts and uncles, over 98 cousins, and we're all so very loving.
That's amazing, but wild. But I mean, whoa, Let's say everybody that's listening is probably like, wait, hold on, what?
But growing up in a family like that, we never say step, we just love and we forgive, and God is love. So my grandfather was, this larger than life soul icon singer, the first African-American, Atlantic Records, and he made history, but he also had a lot of children. And I always say, maybe he didn't have stability when he was growing up. He had to deal with, making it in the entertainment industry, singing for the KKK, and, just going through, trying to, pioneer his way through this industry, and being so broken. No mom, no dad, not knowing, he didn't know a lot of things, but he also said he had children because he knew that they'd love him. And he was the most amazing grandfather. Like, I'm very blessed and grateful. So I can relate to, just people in the industry as a whole, because I understand that we're not, the average white picket fence, and we're not 9 to 5, and we see things differently, and we're open. We're open to love. We're open to just a different life in general, and we don't judge. I mean, that's the last thing that it's hard to explain, but the more you watch the Mama Gang shows, you'll get to know my mindset of where I come from. I love God so very much. So I come from a place of love and forgiveness in all things, and I never judge. I just love. So I'm really grateful. Auntie Riri, you can get a little bit deeper into the doctoral side of things.
So wait, let's just get to the root of this. You just said you have 20, I don't know, anywhere between 20, 21, 25 aunts and uncles. You have 20 aunts and uncles. So that means you have brothers and sisters, that many brothers and sisters.
I am the 21st child of my father's, and I believe the count is, the official count is 21, but the unofficial count is somewhere between 24, 26. My father was a very busy man.
Clearly.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because as I'm hearing Sophia talk and I'm hearing you talk about this, Brittany, but one of the things that I think about is, I found it to be fascinating, and we don't really talk about this, is being in the industry, being a part of this, and having this thing called fame. I found fame to be so fascinating because when there's enough fame, it's like reality alters, and people act differently.
Yep.
People don't act the same.
Yep.
And then the famous person receives all of these benefits and biases, to their benefit and sometimes to their detriment.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that happens was my dad, I got to see my dad. It's really great because my dad, even though he's from Philly and famous and all this other stuff, the wonderful thing about living in Los Angeles, California, is that no one really cares that you're famous, right? But of course, there's paparazzi and things like that and all that stuff. But you can sort of kind of get away with being famous and do regular things sometimes.
At times, because they're so exposed to many people that are famous in LA that, they're not as, like if you were just in some small town in Ohio or someplace, they would be like, oh my gosh, but out here it's like, oh, I saw so-and-so wherever. So I get that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so then one of the things that happens, though, is that when you're in the inner circle of someone who's famous, there is this intimacy, and the people that are surrounding this famous person, there's a lot of favor that they receive, a lot of things that they don't have to socially be responsible for, a lot of things that they can get away with, a lot of things that's acceptable, a lot of things that are just like, okay, that's okay, and I forgive you, and it's fine, and it's all good. And then, matter of fact, even if someone in their inner circle says, I don't appreciate that you do that, and I don't like that, then the famous person can say, oh, well, there's a whole line of other people who do appreciate it and like it, and so if you don't want to get on the good foot, then
you can
get on another foot and leave. It's up to you.
So it's like this, what we know it as, it's like yes men. You have your yes men, and then you have the person that says no, but when you've been so accustomed to yeses all your life, or even in the circle. So what you're talking about is how that circle receives the secondary benefits of the fame, and then what it sounds like is become more apt to saying yes so that they can continue to receive those benefits. And so that's where you develop this yes man mentality, and they start saying, well, I want to get that. I mean, I would just imagine, right? I know when people treat me differently by my association. Sometimes I'm like, I'm waiting. Where's the question? Like, what do you need? What do you want? Did you really ask me for this? Or is there something you're trying to get to, or someone you're trying to get, there's that happens. So I understand that. And that's super interesting because that's one aspect. So you're coming from a daughter aspect.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear the daughter aspect, the psychologist aspect, and then also the wife aspect of you. Because those are three different areas that you can assess what you've lived in your life as a daughter of 21.
Yeah. So first from the daughter, the daughter aspect, I saw a lot of people wanting to just be in the inner circle of my dad, and there was a lot of yes people. But then it depends on, and this is the part that I really wanted to research and study, and this was the first title of my dissertation, where it was the fame and the effects on the individual and the family, only because I thought it was fascinating how it's really up to the integrity and the centeredness and the groundedness of the famous person on who they choose around them. So you can be super famous and have a lot of yes people, and then those are the only people that are around you, right? Or you can insist upon having people that are like, I don't agree, I don't like it. I mean, I'm with you, I'm down with you, but I'm gonna give you my opinion straight up. And then it is up to the famous person to keep those people around them, And for some famous people, it is very difficult to find that, because a person who's not influenced by fame is very, very hard to find. It would have to be someone either famous themselves, from a famous family, or who knows fame and is like, no, thank you. I'll just be over here. All that fame is just a little too much. And they can have like grounding people within them. But that's where it gets a little tough, because if you don't have grounding people close to you and all you have is yes people, then reality really begins to get warped.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
totally.
then that's the part that begins, people don't understand it. People get exposed. TMZ is in business. Everything, you know what I'm saying? Like where all these things happen. However, so as a daughter, I noticed that there were so many women that asked me to call them mom. So much.
Many women that were asking you to call you mom.
Oh yeah, just call me mom. Just call me mom. Just call me mom. Just call me mom.
Really?
And I was like,
wow.
No, thank you, Miss Smith. Thank you, Carolyn. No, thank you. You know, like it would. That's what it was.
And what was your dad like? Like he was like, yeah, call mama.
Super famous, awesome, wonderful, charismatic. Everyone loves him. Guy. That's what he was doing.
And then the women that would come around would just be like, they were trying to manifest that you were their daughter.
Oh yeah. They were just like, oh, yeah, just call me mom. Like, no, thank you. I don't think my mom would like that. So I'm just going to stick to your name.
We've got some other deep avenues to go into with that one, especially from a mom perspective for me on that one. But, you know, that's a whole nother world and a whole nother topic about the respect that other women have for mothers in that world. But that goes back to your dissertation about the effects that fame has on people and their families. It's like, I'm ready to do research with you.
Let's
I'm
do
like,
it.
we're going into the research field together.
Deep dive.
And
Let's
so,
do
yeah.
it.
So, okay. So as a daughter, you're growing up, you see your dad, you've got these siblings around you and you know who your dad is. What's your perspective? What's your interaction? How does this happen? Like you start to become an adult. Do you survey this and say, what's going on? Or how is this?
Well, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was, well, first of all, there's different wives and different children, so there's different stories. So it's sections of history that are different, that I wasn't raised around, but is a part of history.
Okay.
You know, he's such a bigger than life person that there's plenty of books about his life and things like that I wasn't privy to. However, getting to what your initial question where you asked me, how do I see as a daughter? And I told you that part. And how do I see as a psychologist? And I told you about famous people and them having the integrity and the centeredness to pick the people choose around them. But then as a wife, right, where you're saying like from the perspective of the wife, right? I think about, I am not a wife of a famous person. I've only been a daughter of a famous person. However, I did not want to marry a famous person. I think I could handle fame, but I didn't want to marry a famous person. Nevertheless, what I saw though was I have the utmost respect for women who marry famous people or for women who are in relationships with famous people, because they don't really... No one really understands the plight that they have to undergo, because it looks so wonderful. It looks so glamorous. It's so fantastic.
But after the show, when those lights go out, it's
and
like,
all
hey,
the
Grandpa,
trash
let's
is
get to
left
it.
on the ground after the show is
clean
over.
up.
Who's picking up the trash and who's
It's a tough job.
wiping the sweat off of the performer's head because he's exhausted. Yeah, that's interesting.
Who is really loving on that person? Who is really lifting them up? All the lights are gone. All the fans are done clamoring and hollering and screaming, and all that's over.
And here's another thing. Who's really being transparent and honest with this person? Because, you know, if you just continue to say, yes, yes, whatever, and it's wrong, how do you sleep at night? How do you, are you really there for this person's well-being? Or is it what you can receive or get?
Yeah, and that really goes back to the question too. It actually ties in the question that we got from one of the mothers in the motherhood about how do you manage your own emotions to be present for your child. That's a whole nother world in this dynamic. I mean, I imagine your mother has to, go through a whole nother world of her own in order to make sure that you were able to have the care and concern that you needed tended to. But I think what it really comes down to is to be able to be that person that says, this is not right. This is, this is okay. To have your own sound foundation is to know your foundation. What are those things that are important to you? Where does that come from? Have that self-awareness. Because I personally know through the journey of psychology and through the journey of my spiritual walk with God being my foundation, I'm like coupling the two to get more deep and self-aware. And starting to examine, wait, why do I allow this and why do I don't? And someone said something really profound to me. It was in a whole nother setting within the clinical aspect in psychology. Mm-hmm. And it was, what you allow, you permit. What you permit, you promote. What you promote, you teach.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And that just was like, yes, I get it, because what you allow, why are you allowing it? And that becomes the first step in self-awareness. Because sometimes it's, you can know why, and sometimes it's because I want to help. I want to know. I don't want to give up. But then what is it in you that's making you feel called to be that person? What is it? And on my journey of self-awareness, I was able to understand there was generational passed down domino effect on me of like fear of not abandonment, or I can't give up because my father passed away and someone gave up on him. And then what if I give up on someone, and then if you can examine your roots, you're able to then uncover and stand and say, wait a minute, now that I've healed those roots, how do I assess the situation now with with more of a healed heart? I'm not afraid. Wait, this isn't right. Hey, I love you. And I want to tell you that because I love you, this isn't right. That's a whole nother world. It's that self-awareness. So
I think that you really hit on something where you said, hey, wait a minute, I'm not afraid. Because when you go through life, you make me think about the research of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross really, she was a specialist about death and dying and things like that. However, one of the things that I really loved about her research was she talked about how all human emotion is based off of two base emotions, which is love-based or fear-based, right? And so if we do not choose love, then we ultimately end up choosing fear.
Right. And you know what's wild though? You can actually think you're choosing love, but what you think you're choosing in love could be so fear-based that you're like,
talk about it.
Do you know what I mean?
Steve,
so
my example.
Let's go.
I would love to get into the heads of these many, I don't know how many women, but I know if there's 21 children, right, in your world, let's use this example, right?
Sure.
How many of those women I'm loving him, I'm accepting and I'm loving him. Yeah. But really, if they examine themselves as a woman, are you afraid of something? Is there something that you are afraid of? That could come in the forms of, are you afraid of losing a practical side of life? Do you need something that you're afraid of not getting by declining this type of lifestyle? Is there something you're craving that you're scared you won't get unless it's with this person, so you accept it? How do you really love a person? And this is a whole journey. Because
how do you really love a person? I love this question.
Psychology in your psychological aspect, because in my world, if we're shifting it onto my answer, I'm like, okay, I'm not just psychology. I'm also faith-based. I'm all God, right? So it's like God says for me, two greatest commands: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Yeah. I had to really take a look at this. Am I loving God with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength? There's one. This is how I could get rid of my fear. And then two is love your neighbor as yourself, right? Mm-hmm. How am I loving my neighbor as myself if I'm not first loving God, then God gives to me, then I'm able to assess myself because I'm focused on God, right? I was losing that aspect of myself by putting all the focus on neighbor, right? The person. Mm-hmm. You put your focus on a person, you lose sight of God. How are you loving that person if you're not loving God first? So that was it for me.
How are you loving another person truly if you're not loving yourself?
Right.
Truly.
But to
first.
love God is how you love yourself. That's
Come
mine.
on.
To love God is how you love yourself, right? So if I'm not loving God and I'm only focused on this person, I am not loving myself and I am not loving God combined. So that's where it just was like,
but we're also getting into just a whole nother, because we are moms and we obviously have to love ourselves. I asked my grandmother, which is Dr. Burke's mom. She's been my grandmother since I was born because my mom's mom passed away when my mom was 12. So all I've ever known is my Chinese grandmother, Grandma Sunday. So I was very, very close. I lived with my grandparents, toured with my grandfather, and I got very close with my grandmother. And I just started to see, okay, he has a girlfriend here, a girlfriend there, and you're still married to him. And I knew that it was unhealthy. So I asked her one day, I said, gee, Mom, how did you stay and why did you stay? And how did you, fight through all the women, all the fame, the ups and downs? And she looked me dead in my face and she said, my children. And I was bawling out crying. I said, oh my God, that makes sense. Auntie Riri's a doctor. Uncle Selassie's a computer developer. Like, your children, out of all the 21 children, are very successful. That makes sense. So you have to love yourself. But when you're talking about motherhood, you also have to realize,
yes,
I have to sacrifice for my children. And I feel like my grandmother is so phenomenal because she sacrificed what she desired, love, my grandfather just being with her, for really just at settling, not really settling, but staying for her children's, benefit.
Can I tell you something I'm so grateful for that you're bringing up? And one of the things I think I'm most grateful for is my dad was definitely, most likely, a hot mess as a husband, right? But let my mom tell it, but she never.
I'm sorry.
She
Dr.
never,
Burke said hot mess.
Hot mess, I love
Keep
my
it
dad.
real,
I love you,
Dr. Burke.
I love you, Daddy. So, but one of the things
I love you,
is
Daddy.
that is the fact that there was a lot that she managed. And she did not share that with us growing up. I really, really appreciated that. I think that some of my brothers and sisters didn't get that. And so they had this, like, when their dad was gone, they had this, like, oh, I'm mad at him. I'm mad that he's not doing what he's supposed to do as possibly a man, as a husband, and then my mother's telling me as a father he's not doing it either, right? And their own experiences, right, of him not being there. However, my dad was gone too for like 6 months at a time.
Wow.
But my mom, 6 months at a time.
Torn.
But my mom just would not say negative things about
Never.
him.
That's
When I
powerful.
was a child. I got to love him from afar and not have any of her stuff. So, to all you moms out there who are in love with famous men and you have children, I would say, that is a gift. And I'm so grateful because when you're saying that, I'm so grateful to my mom because I was able to have my own relationship with my dad that wasn't tainted by his behaviors as a husband.
So that brings up that point of how your mom had to be a solid rock for you guys to have a positive perspective of your father, because he had a lot going on that obviously he wasn't able to really manage in such a way that he could focus it in one particular area. I have to ask you, as a psychologist, as you survey the land that your father occupied, right? You survey this, and this is very unique and interesting, but I've seen that in entertainment, there's men with multiple kids, different women, different things. So you said multiple wives too. He married multiple people, but
My mom was his fourth wife.
Okay, so that was, and you're the last child?
Officially.
You're the official last child. There might be more. Oh my gosh. But let's just say you're the, but you said you said that your perspective of your aunt and that particular family was different than the other kids. So there was a difference in the way that you were raised, and the difference between the dynamic of that particular family that your mom, your father, and you as a family, you guys encountered.
The dynamic totally different.
Yeah. Did he treat you guys differently?
Wife, I don't know. I only had the father that I had.
Right.
But all I know is that from what I know from my siblings, it was a different environment altogether. I feel like every woman was a part of a different part of his history, and in his maturity and his immaturity.
Right.
He's grown a lot, and what I really admire about my dad is towards the end of his life and the end of his career, he grew a lot. He matured a lot, and he was really focused on what really mattered, which is loving each other, loving everyone, loving God. He just promoted that.
And the acceptance of not being there, because my mother is number 11 from her mother. She's the baby.
Wait, we didn't even touch on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your mom and her are siblings.
Our sisters. And my mom is the older sister of Dr. Burke. My mom.
But the baby of her mom.
So my mom didn't grow up because my grandfather was on tour and, busy. She never got a chance to hang out with her dad until she was 38 years old.
How does that affect her?
Very much so. Though the moments that they did spend together, she actually lived with him too. So my dad passed away. My mom was 38. My grandfather goes, hey, why don't you just come move with daddy and I'll help you with the kids. I had 2 younger siblings. I was already living and touring with my grandpa. So my mom got a chance to be with her dad, love on him. He got a chance to apologize to her and let her know, hey, when I was a young dad, I was in my 20s and 30s. I was too busy. I didn't get to father you. So they got a chance to heal broken wounds and really love one another. And so,
at 38.
Yes. Which was very profound moment in time for my mom, because my mom is 54 now, and she's just like, I'm so grateful for that time I got to spend with my dad, like she would have traded for the world.
I think that there's a lot of positive to, overcoming all of the hurt and the things that you could experience with love. But I think that there's a beautiful aspect of being wise as a result of hearing this story, right? Yes. I think that it's wonderful to look at the bright side of things, but if we can look at all aspects and really take a full spectrum idea of what this looks like, especially given that I'm in psychology, I'm like, oh, I want to dive right in, right? Then we can apply it to current life and to be more proactive and mindful about how these things can impact a person, or even there might be men out there that aren't famous and they're still going through the same behaviors, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
True.
Like, there's plenty of men who have multiple women and children and families, and they're not famous at all. And they're very low key.
So my question is, as a psychologist looking into this, and you had made a comment about, oh, all my children will love me, and he's had this broken state of life, looking at it in that perspective, having multiple families all over, and then you guys got a certain perspective because the way that your grandmother was able to harvest a solid, loving understanding. But then you've got your mom who came in at 38.
Yeah, poor baby.
And I just think about
But what my mom did do right, though, was she was with my dad my whole life because she was in fear of being like her mom and dad. So she met my dad at 15. They got married, had my brother at 18, had me at 20, never left my dad. They broke up and they had their ups and downs, but she would never leave because her mother left. And then grandpa ended up with my grandma Sunday, and they ended up being together. So she was always afraid of, if I do leave him, my children won't have their dad. I didn't have my dad. I don't want that for my kids. So she was focused on breaking generational curses for Prince and I and my younger siblings. So I'm grateful for my mom to, every day for that, to stay with my dad and to even go through all of the challenges that she went through with my dad, because she was afraid, oh my God, I never had my dad. Let me make sure my children have their dad. Yeah. So as moms, we have to sacrifice our feelings 90% of the time to make sure our children have all the tools they need to be successful.
But this is a very great point. This is a very great point you're bringing up. Like mothers who and parents who make mistakes, and everyone's going to make mistakes. The beautiful thing that children are able to see and observe is you're making a mistake, man. Like, oh my gosh, like, Dad, that wasn't a good idea. Mom, I don't agree with that. Right. Like, I don't agree with that. I don't want that for me.
Right.
I got to see all of that and decide, do I want to marry a famous person? I don't think I do.
Well, your husband's pretty successful, but
true.
He's a computer engineer, software developer.
True.
He's amazing. However, he's not famous. And so her children have a sense of complete stability. When she's not there, he's there. That's probably could be from the fear of the things that you went through as a child as well.
Very true.
What do you think made your father behave that way as you're a psychologist and you're a daughter? You've got an inside perspective.
Deep insecurities, growing up with insecurities as a child, and then having a whole bunch of fame and a lot of less rules. When you have fame, you have less rules.
Do you feel that you can see the implications of that on your other siblings too? Speaking of transgenerational trauma.
I think my dad had a lot of kids because he was so busy wanting to be loved because of his own insecurities.
That's sad, yeah.
My siblings, yes, it is sad in that sense where, I love my siblings and I wish that they had the best dad that they could have had. However, it was what it was when it was.
You had to accept it. What are you going to say? It was what it was.
It was what it was. And so, but however, over time, he made these mistakes. He was very insecure. He grew. He was completely protective, controlling at times, and all these things because he learned. But then over time, he began to loosen, to grow, to accept, to be more tolerant. And that was the part where I'm fortunate because I was at the end of his childbearing days, and I got to have the most enlightened, the most mature the
version
most
of him.
grown, the person that he could be. Whereas, you know what, I want to say this. I thank my siblings. I feel like I got the best version of my dad because my siblings went through it.
Oh, yeah.
And he was being the whatever best dad he could possibly think of being, and he had some great examples. He had a really great example. He was adopted, and I think that's why my dad never really was into let me see who's my child and who's not my child, because he was adopted himself. So he just every children that he had children with, he adopted all of
every
their
woman,
children.
yeah.
So, I
sometimes
think
treated those children better than his own because he just had a heart to give.
Yeah.
And serve.
But let's get to the root of it though. At the end of the day, I mean, you've got to really take a look at yourself when you say, all right, I'm having all these kids in different homes and different places, right? And you want to get to the root of what's stemming this. This is just me. I love it. As a doctor, is that what you feel? Like, yeah, I'm just this way. Or do you really think that there's something underlying that's moving a person to behave this way?
I love this. I love this question.
And you're a daughter. So I'm like, I ask you.
I thought about that. I mean, to be honest, the transgenerational trauma and issues and emotional turmoil that went on in my family, that is something that drove me to want to study and become a psychologist. There was a lot of stuff that happened in my family. No one answered the question. Every time I asked it was like, oh, let's not talk about that. And I was like, I need to find the answers and I need to find the truth, hence my journey. And then now, here I am. So now to answer your question, one of the things that I think about is people are at their own stage of development. And it doesn't matter if you're born with this super amazing gift where the world thinks it's like, what? You're so amazing. They could still be underdeveloped in terms of maturity, experience, growth, all these things. So if they didn't have enough love, enough support, and what that looks like growing up, they can only do the best they can.
Yeah.
So fortunately, my dad had all of these challenges, and he got fame. And so fame helped him but he had to grow up in front of everybody, in front of a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, at 11.
And that's just how it went. And so when we talk about, like, is it okay? Like, oh, that's okay. Well, it is okay, first of all, because I'm not to judge, first and foremost.
But the question is it healthy?
Oh, of course.
Is it healthy? It is the healthiest that it could be for him at that time.
Got it.
It's the healthiest it's going to be for him at that time, given his choices, given his, path that he's choosing, because that's what it comes down to. We all have choices. And the choice is, am I going to be my healthiest self? And what does that look like? And that's the choice that I think all those women would have too, is to question like what kind of healthy atmosphere are they providing for their kids. And for your mother, it was love creates the healthiest atmosphere. I'm certain there was more there for her that probably she had to balance.
Patience,
Yeah.
silence,
Forgiveness,
ignoring
things a lot of the times.
But so then we go into to love a person, right? So that's where I'm like looking at, you've got a world of yes men, women, people, whatever around your grandfather, your father, your grandfather. And you've got this whole world of acceptance or permission and grace. And he could, rule
just
the
about
world.
anything.
Just about anything. You ask, you receive, right? Speaking of ask and receive, you become like your own God in a way, right? You have your own sense of creating that,
absolutely.
right? But then
definitely on tour.
Then how do you get to this place of, what's healthy for you? Because did the behaviors ever end? You know what I mean? Did you keep having people? Was your mom the end all be all?
Well,
no.
Here we go. Of course not.
Probably not.
We're talking about a show. Like a show is still a show, and it's a show, and it has all the bits and parts and pieces, and the glamour and the glitz and all that stuff, and it's a show. It's entertaining. Now that's something else outside of real life.
Right.
When we're talking about here's a man and here's a woman, and they're trying to raise kids, and these kids have issues that developmental challenges, things like that. They need to go to school, get picked up, whatever is happening, right? You can have all these things, but it's really about the decision of the person who both of them have to make the decision. Just like I said, the famous person has to decide, I'm not going to just have yes men. I'm going to have people who challenge me, people who don't agree with me, and people who love me.
How does that person get to the place where they decide to make a healthy choice like that?
Now you're talking about something deeper.
Okay. Let's go.
So, okay, well then let's go. So then
we love deep.
Then here we go. How that person gets to a place where they get to choose people like that is that they may have gone through, because my dad was signed to Atlantic Records at 12, 13 years old.
Wow.
So he had to grow up with all of this accessibility, right? So how does one do this? Well, what ends up happening is they might express and experience all of these things that are empty.
Yeah.
You can have so much stuff. You can have let's have the yacht parties, let's have the private jets, everything's on me, everybody, party it up, until then the party dies one day.
Absolutely.
You're done partying. The party is over, and then what?
Yeah.
Then all those people who were yesing you, high-fiving you, saying they love you,
who were on
and
your
all this
payroll, draining you,
are not there.
right?
Because they're busy doing something else. They just wanted to be there for the
They're
party.
on to the next thing.
Yes, they're on the next yacht, right?
So then here comes the empathy in me and the lover nurturer in me, right? So I see your father, and I'm like, and there's also a protector side of me that's like, no, I want to protect him from all those people. And that's where, on this journey to self-awareness, I realize that that's what I like to do. I want to protect the person. I want to, hey, wake up. Hey, Grandpa Solomon. Like, hey, do you know these people have this character? Are you aware of this character? And sometimes they're, and they don't care. Sometimes they don't, right? But it's just a question of who really loves you enough to bring you that awareness early on, or who's just
Do you love yourself enough?
There's the question.
That's what it is.
It's
to allow those people in. You have to love yourself enough to accept someone's critique.
Right.
You are the company you keep. Who are you putting around you? So then that brings me to, you have to surround yourself with people who love themselves for you to even have the encouragement or the discovery or even the example of self-love around you, right? So then who's going to break the chain for real? It's got to come down to those people, in my opinion, it's got to come down to those people who have such self-love that they're willing to say, my engagement with this activity or this behavior is not self-loving. So I have to do what says I love myself. Well, let's transition back to my world, right? Yes. In my world, what that looks like is love your Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. That pours back into loving self for me. And then that trickles down back to what you say as mothers, because as mothers, what do?
Sacrifice.
We sacrifice. But I cannot sacrifice. I had to come to self-awareness with this because it's like trying to figure it out, right? Mm-hmm. I cannot sacrifice God for my kids, because if I truly trust God, it'll trickle down to my kids, it'll trickle down to me, it'll trickle down to myself, and then there will be the healthy atmosphere, because God is love.
No, God is love. Right?
If God is love, and I say I love, I love you, I got you, I got you.
Deep.
Do I really? If I'm not putting God first, and then loving myself as a result of that, and then loving my neighbor, it's like a whole revelation just came, right? And that's, for me, is like a whole different thing. And I had to say that it's not about anybody else. Yeah. It came back to you, right? It came back to me. So I can really empathize, because it's not like, come on, we're just like walk around the elephant in the room. Like, clearly I have children with somebody who has multiple kids, but not 21, but I can understand all of this.
Right.
And for me, what I really, really came to understand in my journey and where I'm at in this point is my foundation and just assessing everything all together. And you want to be the helper, you want to do everything, you want to fix it. It comes back to, where's your ground rules? And for me, God. Yeah. God has to be number one, and I became fearless because of God. I became more self-aware because of God, and through that awareness and knowing, God, where else do I need to work on forgiveness and things in my history? Let's not look at immediate. Let's go back.
Right.
And once I could dig those roots up, and I was like, now I can stand and love myself for this person to see me love myself. That way, then...
And how about forgive yourself?
Yeah. And that way, you're breaking that chain, because otherwise that person's just going to keep moving their world, right? Your grandfather's just going to keep moving his world as everybody just goes, just be nice, be loving. Well, what is loving? What is love?
Honesty.
Boundaries.
Oh, boundaries. That's part two. We're going into the episode part two. This has been a great conversation.
Yes.
I think that because of lack of time, and we've got all our mommies that are probably got to go tend to their kids, I would love to say let's do another part of this another time. But to close us out, since it has to be continued, to close us out, we do a fun thing called Prove You're a Mama. So I would like to ask all of us to grab our purses. It's a new day. Let's grab our purses.
Okay.
And I want you to see if there's anything in there that represents your motherhood. That's kind of like your motherhood stamp. Prove you're a mom.
Dr. Burke has 3, guys.
Yeah, the fact that it's so huge, isn't this proof enough?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Okay.
Like, is that your overnight bag?
Let me see. In my bag.
Let's see. It shows that you
are
a
I got
mom.
something in here. I got many things. This one's funny because I just bought it. Oh, there's 2 things in here.
Oh.
Okay. I have bought this little, this is God Made Family. It's a book I had saved for the kids.
Did I give you guys that one?
No, I bought this one, but you would. This is something you would give me.
So cute.
And vehicle bingo.
Aww.
So this is for Golden, when he rides in the car to check off, I haven't given it to him yet. These were things that I had bought. So this just goes to show my kids were on my mind.
So cute.
And yeah, my funny stuff. I have other weird things in here. It says, I call myself Mary Poppins. What you got, So?
I have a museum pass.
Oh.
We just recently went to the dinosaur museum.
Oh, fun. Yep.
And a snack that he ate, he just throws the trash in my bag.
I don't know. I have like masks for the whole family.
Oh, wow.
We need some, and in case somebody gets cold, you gotta bring something in case someone gets cold.
You're a thoughtful mommy.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. We had such a great conversation. Yes. We need more time. But if you enjoyed this conversation, please make sure that you subscribe, that you follow, that you find us. You can email your questions into officialmamagang@gmail.com or just follow us on Instagram at the Mama Gang. Dr. Burke, we appreciate you so much.
Pleasure. We love you so much.
Until next time, we will catch you again. This has been the Mama Gang Podcast.